aspirants, welcome to T1 Academy. I am Siddharth Gautam, Faculty of Indian Economy. So as part of the rapid revision program that we are providing for you, we are moving on to the next topic within this program, that is the unemployment. Okay, so as part of this session, we'll be discussing couple of topics, that is the unemployment and also the poverty. Okay, so the first topic would be the unemployment. Now, what is unemployment? First of all, when it comes to the unemployment, one thing that you need to remember is that when it comes to the unemployment, see, unemployment is nothing but it is a socio-economic condition. It is a socio-economic condition in which a particular person or a group of people could not find any work. Could not find any work. That is what is called as the unemployment. Okay. If any particular person or the group of people cannot find a work according to their qualifications, okay, according to their qualification, okay, then that is what is called as the unemployment. If, for example, I am in the age of this working group, okay, and I have the qualifications, I am in the right age to work and I want to work, I am seeking the employment. But if there is no opportunity that is provided in order for my qualification or for my, interest towards work, then that is what is called as the state of unemployment. Okay, and the state of unemployment or the unemployment scenario is majorly seen in the developing countries or the countries which have the more population. It is in the developing countries or the countries which have more population, the amount of unemployment is more. Clear? Next. Now let us understand the key concepts with respect to the unemployment. The first concept is the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate. Unemployment rate is nothing but it is the percentage of the population, okay, who are in the age of working group but still they could not find any work. Okay, it is the total percentage of the people who could not find the work in the total age of the labor force. The people who are in the working age group who could not find any kind of employment, then that is what is called as the unemployment rate. Next, LFPR, labor force participation rate. See, labor force participation rate is nothing but the percentage of the people who are employed in the working age population. In the working age population, we are not including the entire population here. We are just including the working age population, which is typically 16 to 64 or something like that. Okay. So, as part of the LFPR, only the working age population is included, and within that working age population, how many people are employed is what is called as the LFPR. The criteria for LFPR calculation is the working age population. Next, WPR, workforce participation rate. Workforce participation rate is nothing but it is the ratio of working population to the total population. It means that the entire population is taken into the consideration, and within that entire population, the percentage of the people who are employed or who have some kind of activity to perform which is remunerative is what is called as the WPR. Next, the dependency ratio. Dependency ratio is nothing but we have the 0 to 14 and 65 plus. Okay, 0 to 14 age people and the 65 plus years of age people who are dependent on the working age population. Either it can be these children or it can be the old age people. Okay, so these two age or these two sector of the people who are dependent on the working age population, then that is what is called as the dependency ratio. They are the dependents. They are the dependents. Clear? Next. Now, types of unemployment in India. Types of unemployment in India. See, in India, because of the diversity of economic activities or because of the diversity within the regions, we have the unemployment types into different forms. Okay, the unemployment types is divided into different forms. The first one is structural unemployment. Structural unemployment. Okay, structural unemployment is nothing but it is a kind of mismatch between the skills possessed and skills demanded. Skills possessed and skills demanded. You do not have the skills that are demanded by a particular work, or you do not have the skills that is demanded by a particular company. Your skills are entirely different. The point here is not the qualification. You have the qualification, but you do not have the skill. Okay, just like engineer who has the qualification or who has the certificate of the passing out from the engineering, but still you do not have the basic computer knowledge or you do not have the software skills to join as a software engineer, then the employment will be, what do you say, denied to him. Clear? So that is what is called as the structural unemployment. Clear? Next. Frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is nothing but, for example, I am working as a faculty here. Okay. Now, if I want to switch my job, okay, into another, what do you say, area or into another place, then obviously I need to give a notice period. Okay. So that period between two institutes or two companies is what is called as the frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is that small gap in between you are unemployed from switching one company to the other company. Okay, 1 month or 2 months is what is called as the frictional unemployment. Next, cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is nothing but it is caused by the recession. It is caused by the recession. The slowdown of the economy caused by the recession leads to the unemployment. See, recession is not technically directly linked to unemployment. One consequence of recession is the unemployment. Okay, recession is nothing but it is the negative GDP. Recession is nothing but negative GDP where the output or where the production has declined. Because of the declined output or because of the declined production, because of the declined output or because of declined production, the people or the workers in that particular company lose their jobs. That is how the recession leads to unemployment. Now, it is during the times of recession or it is during the times of the slowdown of the economy, the government usually comes up with this concept called as fiscal stimulus. Okay, fiscal stimulus. What is fiscal stimulus? Fiscal stimulus is nothing but when there is a slowdown in the economy, the government tries to pump the money into the market so that that money can be used in order to create the capital assets, and those capital assets will create the employment within the system, within the economy. That is what is called as the, what do you say, the fiscal stimulus. For example, if there is a recession, okay, now there is, because of the recession, one consequence of the recession is the unemployment. Okay, now in order to tackle the employment, there is injection of money into the market. Okay, the government through borrowings or the government through some means, it will try to inject the money into the market. So this injection of the money for a smaller period of time will increase the fiscal deficit. Why? Because we are borrowing the money. Now this money is used in the creation of the capital assets. The capital assets which creates employment. The capital assets which creates the employment. So as a consequence of the employment that is generated, there is an output that is happening. As a consequence of the output, there is a growth that is witnessing, and that leads to the decrease in the fiscal deficit over a period of time. Over a period of time. That is how the concept of fiscal stimulus happens. The fiscal stimulus. Clear? Next. Okay, next. Now, Seasonal unemployment. Seasonal unemployment is especially seen in the rural areas, because the rural economy, especially the agriculture, is more dependent on the cropping seasons. We have the most prominent cropping seasons in India. The Kharif season because of the southwest monsoon, and the Rabi season because of the northeastern monsoon. Now the Kharif season and the Rabi season put together would last for around 8 months. Okay. Now the other 4 or 3 months the farmers are idle, they do not have any kind of work, and that period in which they do not find any kind of work is what is called as the seasonal unemployment. Okay, but that is the reason because of which the government of India has come up with this act called as MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Okay, so that at least 100 days of guaranteed work, 100 days of guaranteed work is provided to farmers in the rural areas. Okay, mind you, it is for all the farmers. It is not only for the farmers who belong to particular social group or who belong to particular income levels. Clear? So the guaranteed employment of 100 days is provided to all the farmers in the rural areas in order to tackle this concept of the seasonal unemployment. Okay, or for example, there might be seasonal demands with respect to a particular industry. For example, we have the summer season now. As a consequence of the summer season, there is more demand for the ACs. Now, there would be less demand for the water heaters. Now, as a consequence of the less demands for the water heaters, any company which is producing the water heater might cut down its employees or might cut down its working population or working criteria. Okay, so in order to save the money, or in order to save the the resources, the company which might or which is producing the heaters will cut short its working resource or human resource. Clear? Next, disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment is nothing but when more people are employed. When more people are employed than required, then that is what is called as disguised unemployment. For example, there is one particular piece of land, one acre of land, okay, and the number of people demanded by 1 acre of land is 10 people, but 30 or 40 people are working on the limited piece of land. Now, even though 30 or 40 people are working on the limited piece of land, the output from this land will not increase. There is a limited output, though 5 members are working or though 20 members are working. So, as a consequence of this, the resources need to, or income or the profit that has been generated within that piece of land, which actually should be shared by 10 people, now is being shared by 30 or 40 people, which is leading to decreased productivity or decreased profits on each person. So there is a less per capita income. There is less per capita income because of this factor. That is the reason because of which in India the agricultural sector is growing at slow rate. Okay, for example, within the agricultural sector, the amount of employment rate that we have is 46.1% now. 46.1% of India's population are dependent or derive their livelihood through agriculture. Now, there is more number of people who are involved in the economic activity, which is demanding less number of people. The Indian agriculture system is not demanding 46.1% of India's population to work on it. So, the profit is being generated is being divided among this 46.1% of the people, leading to low per capita incomes in rural areas, and that is the reason because of which we have the high poverty in rural areas. When compared to the urban areas and the rural areas, the poverty rate is more in the rural areas because of these reasons. There are other reasons like land fragmentation, inconsistent monsoons, etc. But within the concept of employment, this is one of the biggest reason because of which we have the low growth levels in the rural areas. Clear? Next. Now, underemployment is nothing but when a particular person performs the role which is not in sync to the qualification that he have. His qualification is higher than the work that is provided to him. Higher qualification but inferior work. Okay, so the skills of the particular person are not fully utilized or not being fully utilized by that particular, the employer. Clear? Next, technical or technological unemployment. Now, if you read the recent survey, okay, if you read the recent survey, there is a strong debate within the survey that the artificial intelligence might take away certain jobs or the the roles that are performed by the human resource. Okay, so artificial intelligence is posing the threat to the human resource. Clear? Now, the same concept is explained as part of the technological technological unemployment, where the technological advancement or the machines might replace human resource. The human resource is being replaced by the machines. The machines are taking away the job that is usually performed by the human resource. That is the reason because of which there is a strong debate with respect to artificial intelligence in the recent survey. Clear? Next, open unemployment. Okay, open unemployment is nothing but individuals who are actively seeking the employment, but could not find the suitable jobs. Is what is called as the open unemployment. Open unemployment in fact gives the larger picture. Okay, next. Now, causes of unemployment in India. The causes of unemployment in India. First one is the slow industrial growth. Okay, within the survey we have understood why the industrial growth in India is very much less. The industrial growth in India is very much less because we have directly shifted from agriculture based economy to the service sector based economy. We have neglected the industries. The impetus or the necessary impetus that need to be given for the industries has been neglected, and that is the reason because of which there is slow growth in the industries. Okay, so and there is no technological advancement with respect to industries. Okay, and there is less investments. Okay, the investments are less when compared to the investments that we get in the the service sector. Next, agricultural dependence. I have told you around 46.1% of India's population is dependent on the agriculture, which is contributing the growth of 16 to 17%, which is not in proportion. Okay, there are more number of people who are involved in the agriculture, but the growth of the agriculture sector is very less because of the wide reasons like inconsistent monsoon, the disguised unemployment, the land fragmentation, etc. Okay, for example, the land holding size in India is 1.1 hectare. The average land holding size in India is 1.1 hectare, which is far less, and the output or the profit that is created out of this limited land holding is not sufficient for the year-long consumption. And that is the reason because of which we have the more unemployment in the rural areas. Next, technological disruptions that we have understood. The concept of automation, the concept of artificial intelligence, the concept of machinery, the concept of technological infusion, or these comes under the technological disruption that has been created and leading to unemployment. See, remember, unemployment is the scenario that usually happens in those countries where the population is more. Those countries where the population is more, the unemployment rate is more, because the country cannot provide the opportunities for the entire population, or for the required amount of the population who are seeking the work. That is the reason because of which those countries which are of the high population will have the high unemployment rate. Clear? Next. Now, social issues. Social issues. The rapid population growth. Rapid population growth can also be the criteria because of the, what do you say, I have told you just now, there is a lack of mechanism or the lack of the things from the part of the government to provide the employment to every person. Okay, next, cultural preference. Cultural preference is nothing but the preference that you choose. Okay, what do you say, the need for government job or the preference for the government job restricts the opportunities or restrict the, what do you say, the activities that are catered by the private sector. Okay, the private sector is offering you more number of roles or more number of opportunities, but you do not want you to be part of the private sector, you want to secure a government job. So as a consequence of that, there is, for years long you keep on preparing for the government jobs, though you are incapacity to perform the work that is catered by the private sector. Clear? Next, educational causes. First one is the skill mismatch. Skill mismatch. That is the reason because of which the government is coming up with this many skill development programs. We are having the qualification, but we are not having the skills. Okay, the qualifications has been gained by writing the exams. So the education system is in such a way that it is producing the graduates, but it is not producing the skilled graduates. Clear? Next, theoretical learning. That is, I have told you just now, it is more theory based than practical based. The education system is more theory based than practical based, than being the practical based. Clear? Next, policy causes. Policy causes are nothing but the initiatives or the lacuna from the side of the government to come up with the initiatives that might generate the employment. Okay, and also the regional disparities. Areas which are developed will have high employment opportunities. Urban areas will have diverse employment opportunities. Okay, or the rural areas or the remote areas does not have the enough opportunities. Clear? Now, impact of unemployment in India. The first one is the economic impact. See, one thing that we need to understand with respect to unemployment is that when there is an unemployment on prolonged basis, if there is a prolonged unemployment, there is poverty. The prolonged unemployment leads to poverty. Now, when there is a poverty, the government need to come up with certain poverty alleviation programs. Okay, which is a stress on the financial resources. Okay, now the government needs to borrow the money in order to come up with this poverty alleviation programs. Okay, when the resources that are generated or when the income of the government in terms of the revenue expenditure is not enough for coming up with this poverty alleviation programs, then the government need to borrow, leading to the financial burden. Clear? So that is how the economic impact or the increasing unemployment leads to the increased poverty. Increased poverty leads to increasing financial burden on the part of the government, and that is the reason because of which there is slowdown in the economy. Clear? Next, social impact. The social impact. See, if you see any area in which there is high level of unemployment, have high amount of poverty, and the crime rates happens from poverty. The people who are under the continuous state of poverty are brainwashed and are involved into extremist activities, or involved or made as the antisocial elements. Okay, and also the psychological impact. See, there is a saying in English called as idle brain is devil's workshop. Is devil's workshop. It means that if you are not occupied with any work, you are just sitting idle in your home, you get all kinds of thoughts which might eat away your brain. Okay, so the psychological problems, the anxiety, depression, panic attacks, etc., are the reason because of your brain not involving in any kind of activity, the productive activity. So that is how the unemployment leads to depression, the anxiety, and low self-esteem among the unemployed individuals. Clear? Next. Now, government schemes to generate employment. I have told you that is the reason, because see, it is a reason because of unemployment we have the poverty. So the government needs to either increase the employment rate or increase the what is the number of schemes in order to alleviate the poverty. So it is better for us to increase or provide the employment opportunities so that they can contribute to the growth of the economy, rather than just providing the what is the incentives or providing the subsidies at the free of cost, so that the person will not earn anything. Clear? So that is the reason because of which we have come up with this Pradhana Mantri Employment Generation Program, Prime Minister Employed Generation Program, okay, where the credit linked subsidies, okay, are provided to the micro enterprise development. Okay, the subsidies are provided in the form of the lower interest rates. Okay, the credit is provided in the form of the lower interest rate so that the micro enterprises can develop. Okay, for example, there is a subsidy of 25 to 35% depending on the location and sector of this micro enterprise. Okay. Next, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. See, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, as I have told you, it is the policy of the government where 100 days of guaranteed work, 100 days of guaranteed work is provided to the people or farmers in the rural areas. Okay, so as a consequence of this, there is a seasonal unemployment which is targeted. The seasonal unemployment is brought down. Okay, and the rural poverty also can be brought down. The rural poverty also can be brought down. So it is through the seasonal, and it is through Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, the seasonal unemployment and the rural poverty can be brought down. Clear? Startup India. Startup India. See, Startup India in India is very important as far as the Indian economy is concerned, because it encourages the entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurship is provided or encouraged by the government. Okay, and as part of the startup program, there are certain incentives that are provided. For example, the tax exemption, 3-year tax exemption is provided so that the particular person can invest the money, or the particular person can generate the employment through the money that he need to pay as the tax. Okay, so the tax amount, the tax that need to be paid to the government is being used as the capital in order to boost his industry. Okay, and in India, the startups have become so famous now, or so important now. In many of the startups are focusing on the service sector. The number of startups that are part of the service sector has been increasing rapidly. Clear? Next, Stand Up India. Stand Up India. Stand Up India, it provides the entrepreneur opportunities among the SC, ST groups, especially and also women. Okay, the loans are provided at lower interest rates. The incentives have been given, and sometimes the tax exemption that we have provided as part of the Startup India is also provided as part of the Stand Up India. But the Stand Up India, remember, it is just for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and for women. Okay, next. Skill India Mission. Skill India Mission. The major aim of the Skill India Mission is to develop or enhance the skills. The skills that are required for a particular employability. Okay, and one of the prominent program as part of this Skill India Mission is the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Clear? Next. See, the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, it concentrates or lays emphasis on the skill development. Okay. Next, Udan scheme. Udan scheme, it concentrates on the skill development among the school girl students. School girl students. Among the girl students, the skill development is promoted. Next, Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana. Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana. The objective of this particular program or the initiative of the government is to provide the financial institution to the employers for creating new job opportunities. Financial institute to employers, not employees, employers. The one who is giving the job, a financial incentives is given to that particular person because he is creating new role or is creating new jobs. Clear? So, the key benefit would be government covers EPFO contribution for newly hired employees. See, within the EPFO, there are two things, the employees contribution and employer contribution. Okay. So, there has to be an employer contribution. Now, as part of the EPFO, that employer contribution is reduced slightly because he is creating a new job here. Okay. So, that is what is called as the Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana. Clear? Next. National Career Service. National Career Service. The objective of the National Career Service is an online platform that connects jobs with employees. For example, we have the LinkedIn, a concept called as LinkedIn, where the people who are actively seeking job put their profile on the LinkedIn, okay, put their details on the LinkedIn, and any particular person who is trying to search for the employees will select one of them or will provide the opportunity to one of them. Okay, so that is what is called as the National Career Service. National Career Service is nothing but an online platform that connects job seekers with employers. Clear? And also the key feature of this is that it provides the counseling or the job melas are created. The job melas are created. Okay, next, Pradhan Mantri Vishwakarma Scheme. Pradhan Mantri Vishwakarma Scheme. It provides the support for the artisans and the craftsmen. The support is provided to the artisans and the craftsmen by providing the loans and enhancing the skills. Providing loans and the enhancing skills. Clear? Next. Now, some of the indices that are related or that are released by the international institutions and the Indian institutions with respect to the unemployment or employment and also the well-being. Okay, the first one is Human Development Index. Human Development Index, it is released by United Nations Development Program. Okay, agency of UNO. Okay, a body of UNO, that is the United Nations Development Program, releases this Human Development Index. Clear? And the key indicators here are the health. Within the health, the life expectancy at birth. The life expectancy at birth is calculated. You might, assume that within health the maternal mortality rate etc. are calculated. No, the life expectancy at birth is calculated. Next, education. Education. Within the education, the mean and expected years of schooling is calculated. The mean and expected years of schooling. Okay, and within the standard of living, the gross national income is calculated. The gross national income. Clear? So these are the three indicators. See, for any exam, the indicators become very important. The indicators can be directly asked as a question in any exam. So when you are preparing or when you are going through any indicator, try to be well aware of the, the indicators. Next, India's HDA rank in 2023 is 134. Is 134 out of 191 countries. Clear? So that is with respect to the Human Development Index. Next, multi-dimensional poverty index. This is very, very important. Multi-dimensional poverty index. Now, multi-dimensional poverty index, it is released by UNDP and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. Now, indicators are the health. Within the health, the nutrition and child mortality is the criteria. Next, education. The years of schooling and school attendance is also taken as the criteria, school attendance. Next, the living standards. Housing, electricity, drinking water and sanitation. See, living standard becomes very important, and within the living standard, the clothing is not mentioned. Remember, the clothing is not mentioned. You need to be very well aware of what is mentioned and what is not mentioned. So, India's achievement by the year 2023, 135 million people are lifted out of the poverty, between 2015 to 2021. It is because of the majority of the welfare programs that are being created, the people are lifted out of the poverty between these years. Clear? Next. Now, gender inequality index. Gender inequality. And remember one thing, when it comes to the multidimensional poverty index, there is another multidimensional poverty index that is released by the Indian government. The Niti Aayog releases the multidimensional poverty index in India. Now, apart from all these indicators are part of the indicators that are released by the Niti Aayog. But apart from all these indicators, there are additional two indicators which are taken into criteria by the Niti Aayog. The one is the maternal mortality rate, and another one is the financial inclusion, especially the bank account. In terms of the bank account, any person who has the bank account or the criteria of the bank account is also taken into consideration for the calculation of the poverty index in the context of India. Clear? Next, gender inequality index. It is released by the again United Nations Development Program. See, remember, the Human Development Index is released by the United Nations Development Program. Next, the Multidimensional Poverty Index is released by the United Nations Development Program and also the Oxford Poverty Index. Okay, and next, the Multidimensional Poverty Index in context of India, it is released by the Niti Aayog. Now, Gender Inequality Index, it is released by the United Nations Development Program. Now, what are the key indicators? The key indicators which are taken into the criteria for the release of the Gender Inequality Index. The first one is reproductive health. Reproductive health is being taken into the criteria. Okay. Now within the reproductive health, the maternal mortality and the adolescent birth rate, that is the thing. Next, empowerment. Within the empowerment, the female education is taken to the criteria, and also the parliamentary representation. This is very important in the context of the recently passed bill, that is the 33% compulsory reservation for women in the House of Parliament. Clear? Next, labor force participation. Labor force participation is the nothing but the male to female ratio in LFPR. Within the LFPR group, within the labor force participation rate group, that is the 15 to 64 years of age, the male to female ratio is what is considered as the labor force participation. Now, India's rank as part of the gender inequality index is 122 out of 191 countries according to the 2023 data, that is 122 is the rank. Clear? Next, gross national happiness index. Gross national happiness index. In fact, it is called as the happiness index. And this happiness index was brought up by the Bhutan, the country of Bhutan. Now you might ask you a question, how the gross national happiness index or the can be calculated? How does the happiness of the particular person can be calculated? Now there is a criteria that has been given. First one is the psychological well-being. The psychological well-being. There has to be a psychological well-being. There has to be a, the satisfaction with the medium of work that is performing. There has to be a work-life balance. There has to be a, the happiness that is derived from the family, etc. Next, health and education. There should be a proper health without any kind of stress, and the education that is provided should be rational and scientific. Okay. Next, the time use. Time use is nothing but there has to be a work-life balance, which this generation lacks. There has to be a work-life balance. Your home should not be your workplace. We have the concept of work from home, etc. But the thing is that the home should not be the workplace. The home should be the home only. Okay. So that is the reason because of which the time use also becomes the important criteria for the gross national happiness index. Next, environmental conservation. Happy environment is the happy life. Why? Because there has to be a proper environment, there has to be a proper greenery, there has to be a proper sunlight, there has to be a proper ventilation, and your body or your mind need to have the elements of the environment. Okay. So that is the reason because of which the environmental conservation also becomes very, very important in order to make you happy. Clear? Now, as part of the GNH rank or the gross national happiness rank, India ranked 126th. According to World Happiness Report, India ranked 126th rank, and the first rank is Finland. First rank is secured by the Finland. Clear? Next. So this is with respect to the the employment, or the topic of employment. See here, unemployment in India is increasing. We have the challenges with respect to each sector. Okay, and we also have the certain challenges on part of the government. But still, it is because of the MGNREGA, or it is because of the the PM Pradhan Mantri Employment Guarantee Programs, the Skill India Mission, etc. We are trying to create the employment opportunity so that the the skill-based employment can be generated. Clear? So that is with respect to this particular topic. Move on to our next topic, that is the poverty. The poverty. Now, before understanding the different types of poverties, let us understand what actually the poverty is. The concept of poverty. See, poverty is the state where a particular person or the group of people cannot afford the basic minimum needs. Basic minimum needs. As we all know, poverty is the scenario, or poverty is the situation where the people cannot afford the basic needs, okay, that are very much crucial and essential in their life. Clear? Now, when it comes to the poverty, we have understood it is a condition where individuals are deprived of basic necessities. Okay, if the income of particular person, okay, cannot afford, or the income that is earned by the particular person cannot earn, or cannot what do you say, is not enough in order to purchase these basic minimum needs, then that is what is called as the poverty. Now, what are those basic minimum needs? The food, the clothing, shelter. You can also consider it as the basic minimum amount of schooling, etc. Okay, so the deprivation is more, so that the particular person is not in a position to satisfy his basic needs. That is what is called as the poverty. Now, when it comes to the poverty, there are certain key concepts. First one is the poverty line. The poverty line. Poverty line is nothing but there is a particular line which is considered as the benchmark. It is considered as the benchmark, or it is the criteria through which the individuals are separated from the above poverty line and the below poverty line. Now, if any particular person is in this ambit of the below poverty line, then it means that that particular person is earning very meager income, or earning a very less income. Okay, so this dividing line will divide the people into two groups: who are above poverty line and who are the people who cannot afford the basic minimum needs. Okay, and majority of the countries use this as the standard mechanism, use the poverty line as the standard mechanism through which the poverty analysis is done there in respective countries. Okay, see, this particular topic is linked to the concept called as the absolute poverty. The absolute poverty. Absolute poverty is the state where the people cannot afford the bare minimum physical needs, like food, clothing, and shelter. Clear? So, there is an interconnection between the poverty line, which clearly establishes the fact that the people are divided into two groups based on their income. One is the above poverty line and one is the below poverty line. And those people who are below poverty line, they could not afford the basic minimum needs, which is directly linked to another concept called as the absolute poverty. Clear? Absolute poverty. Clear? Now, the question that can be asked here is nothing but, see, first of all, the poverty line and absolute poverty are interlinked, but the criteria differs from one country to the other country. Okay, it's not that the countries will follow the same criteria in determining the poverty levels. The country follows different criteria in determining the poverty levels. The determination or the criteria for the poverty levels differs from one country to the other country. So that is the thing that is established as particular thing. Clear? Okay, next. Now, the criticism of absolute poverty. We have understood what is absolute poverty, but there is a criticism. The criticism is that not every country has the uniform criteria. Not every country has the uniform criteria. It means that the standard that has been set by the every country doesn't have the uniform criteria. There are no universal standards. Okay, and even if they want to bring the uniform criteria, or even if they have, sometimes if they have uniform criteria, the universal standards does not include the cultural and the regional variations. Okay, the localized variations or localized cultures are not taken into the criteria in the context of the absolute poverty. Okay, see, for example, there are certain things that happen in the country. There are certain problems which are localized in nature. Now, those aspects are not being considered as part of this particular absolute poverty. Next, even the subsistent requirements like food and clothing vary across the communities. Okay, see, when we say the minimum standards of living, When we say the minimum standards of living, the one thing that we need to comment is that what is the criteria of the minimum standard living. In some countries, the education is considered as the minimum standard, but in some countries, education is not considered, or in some case, a proper house with the kitchen, bedroom, etc. is considered as the minimum standard, but in some areas that is not considered as the minimum standard of living. So, what is the criteria for the minimum standard or the basic necessities is not established by the absolute poverty. Clear? Next. Now, relative poverty. Relative poverty. Relative poverty is nothing but the poverty standards that are explained in relation to particular society and the other society. Particular society and the other society. Okay. For example, the comparison of the poverty levels between two societies. To be frank, these two societies might not be performing well. Okay, though the societies individually are not performing well, or those societies has the inherited poverty in its system, but still they compare themselves and they see that society or that country or that particular state is in much state of poverty than compared to us. Okay, so the poverty when seen in the relation to living conditions of a society at a particular time and place, then that is what is called as the relative poverty. Okay, so the social norms, okay, the social norms and the considerations in which there is a acceptable level of growth or acceptable level of the standard of living, okay, then that is the society which is above the poverty line. Okay, see, generally the nature of the society changes, the nature of society changes and the requirements of the society changes over the time. It's not that the requirements of the societies are standard and static at every point of time. For example, down the line before 15-20 years, there is no much demand for the air conditions as we have now. Okay, the usage or the the necessities of the people are growing, and that growing levels of necessities dictates the concept of the poverty. Clear? Next. Now, the criticism of the poverty line concept. Okay, see, the one criticism of the poverty line concept is the limited scope. Okay, for example, the minimum standard of living is what we consider. For example, there is a concept called as food. Okay, the assumption that is created or the analysis through which the poverty line is drawn is based on the calorie based approach. It means that how many calories are sufficient for a particular person to be out of the poverty. Okay, but this calories based approach is not accounting or is not taking into the consideration the concept of the malnutrition. Okay, or the health issues that rise because of the undernutrition, the child stunting or the child wasting. These are the concepts that arises because of the malnutrition. Now, those are not being included. See, the calorie based approach is nothing but just if we eat the 1 cup of white rice, we get enough calories, but that is not the nutritious food. Okay, nutritious food will have the fiber, the vitamins, the protein, etc. Okay, that is the balanced diet, that is the balanced way of having the food. But here just the calorie based approach is given, which is nothing but indicating the limited scope of the poverty line. Clear? Next, oversimplification. Simplification. See, oversimplification is nothing but just few 2 or 3 criteria have been taken, and according to those criteria the poverty line is drawn. Okay, in the context of understanding it, it is very simple. This is the poverty line and these are the indicators that we have with respect to the drawing of the poverty line. But the concept is that the regional inequalities, the social barriers, etc. are not taken into the consideration. It is because of the regional barriers and the social inequalities, there is much concentration of the poverty, and that indicators are not included as part of the poverty line. Next, exclusion of social consumption. Exclusion of social consumption. See, the poverty line or the criteria through which the poverty line is drawn, I have told you, when the particular person is not in a position to fulfill his basic needs, then that is what is called as the poverty line. Now within those poverty line, we just understand those things which satisfies the hunger of the person, which satisfies his living in terms of the clothing and shelter, but we are not including those things which improves the quality of life. Okay, the quality of the life can be improved through the sanitation, education, etc. Okay, when there is no proper education, there won't be a proper society. The proper society will not lead into a proper civilization. That is the reason because of which the education becomes very important, and the education should be the criteria, as the education should be the what is the most essential component through which the criteria of the poverty can be determined. Okay. See, for example, in India, we have the coaching institutes, okay, or we have the other institutes for which 18% of the GST is collected. But on primary education, there is no GST. Okay, why? Because the primary education is considered as the most essential component of the child's well-being. That is the reason because of which we do not collect any kind of GST, or we do not impose any kind of GST on the primary education, considering it as very much essential for the development of the child. Clear? Next. Inability to measure severity. Inability to measure severity. The headcount ratio fails to account for the intensity of poverty or inequality within the pure communities. Okay. See, we are understanding the people who are above poverty line and below poverty line, but we are not trying to understand the intensity of the people who are under below poverty line. Okay, there might be people who cannot afford, or who cannot have the basic minimum. Okay, it's not basic, but even much essential thing are not part of their life. Okay, so we are trying to understand, or we are trying to divide the people into above poverty line and below poverty line, but the intensity of the people who are below the poverty line could not be established here. Next, geographical variation. Geographical variation. Okay, aggregated poverty estimates at the national level often overlook state specific differences. This is very important. The state specific differences need to be understood. We are trying to draw the conclusion with respect to the overall levels of the poverty, but the most localized reasons, or the state centric reasons, or state specific reasons are being neglected. For example, there might be one state when, for example, there is a northeastern state where there are no much industries, where there is no development happening through infrastructure. Many of the people are confined to agriculture, or many of the people still derive their livelihood through agriculture. Now, in those states, the relative poverty levels are more. Okay, so as a consequence of that, you need to take the necessary steps according to the economic scenario or the economic activities in those places. Clear? So that is the reason. The state centric reasons need to be understood in order to come up with the poverty alleviation programs. If the state centric reasons are neglected and avoided and ignored, then obviously you cannot bring the results, or you cannot target the beneficiaries with respect to the poverty alleviation programs. Clear? Next. Now, the committees on poverty estimations in India. Okay, what are the committees and what are the recommendations with respect to the poverty estimation? Okay, now the first one is the Planning Commission Working Group. The Planning Commission Working Group, which was constituted in the year 1962. Okay, this particular group, it laid a recommendation, that it came up with this recommendation that there has to be different poverty lines for rural and the urban areas. Okay, establishing the poverty lines for the rural and the urban areas according to the growth of the rural area and according to the growth in the urban area. There has to be a poverty line according to the income that is generated by the particular person. So the average daily income, the average daily income is taken as the criteria for the development of this particular commission. Clear? Next, Dandekar and Rath committee. It is very important committee and very much times asked in the examination. It was constituted in the year 1971. Okay. Now, this particular committee is based on the detailed assessment using National Sample Survey. Okay, the data that is collected as part of the national sample survey, okay, of 1960 and 61 as used as the basis for this commission to define what is poverty. Okay, and according to this commission, the daily consumption or the calorie based approach was brought in. The calorie based approach was brought in where any particular person, both in the rural areas and the urban areas, if he could afford the basic food with 2250 calories, 2250 calories, then it means that that particular person is out of poverty. Okay, next comes the Alag committee. The Alag committee. Now, for the first time, the Alag committee, it is the Alag committee which has differentiated the concept of poverty from the calorie based approach. He opined that it is the nutrition that has to be taken into the criteria. Okay, it is on the basis of the nutrition, different poverty lines are drawn for the rural and the urban areas. Okay, differing with the Dandekar and Rath committee, which is completely based upon the calorie based approach of 2250 calories per day for a particular person to be out of the poverty. That particular thing was negated, or that particular thing was opposed by the Alag committee, and he opined that apart from the calorie based approach, there also should be a nutrition based approach. Nutrition based approach. Clear? Next. Now, next comes the Lakdawala committee. Lakdawala committee. Now, this particular person again he laid an emphasis of the actual calorie consumption. Okay. So, the state specific poverty lines, need to be drawn. Okay, and that state specific poverty lines need to be drawn based on the consumer price index, based on the retail level of the prices. The retail level of the prices, okay, especially in the context of the CPI industrial workers for the urban areas and CPI agricultural labors in the context of the rural areas. We have understood when we discuss the the consumer price index as part of the inflation. We have understood how the price index at the retail level is calculated along different areas. We have the CPI rural, CPI urban, CPI industrial workers, CPI agricultural labors, CPI combined. Okay, so all these are taken into the criteria in order to understand the broader picture of the CPI. But here, according to the Lakdawala committee, the CPI industrial workers is taken for the rural areas and the CPI agricultural labor is taken into the consideration for the understanding of the rural poverty. See, remember, in India, we always presume, because of the population or etc., we always presume that it is the urban poverty which is more when compared to the rural poverty. But rural population is more. Remember, still the rural population is more, and the rural poverty in India, according to recent survey, is 4.86%. Whereas urban poverty is just near, which is 4.09%. 4.09%. Clear? So the rural poverty is greater when compared to the urban poverty. Okay, and this particular Lakdawala committee, it recommended discontinuing the practice of scaling poverty estimates using national account statistics. Okay, the scaling or the measurement of the poverty based on the national account statistics needed to be discontinued. Clear? Next. Tendulkar committee. See, Tendulkar committee, it is the one of the very important committee. Very important committee as far as the estimation of the poverty is considered. Okay. See, the committee recommendations that we have till now, be it the planning commission, working committee, or the Rath committee or the Lakdawala committee, etc., their recommendations have been revamped. The drawbacks of all the recommendations have been corrected or have been adjusted by the Tendulkar committee. Now that Tendulkar committee, first one thing is that it moved away from the calorie based approach. The calorie based approach, which determines that minimum amount of the calorie is required in order for the person to be out of the poverty line, has been done away with. Okay, it came up with this concept of nutrition based approach. That is one thing. With respect to the food, the nutrition based approach has been created. And the uniform poverty line basket has been created, and this particular basket will have the minimum amount of requirements. Okay, the basic necessities are the components of this particular basket, and that particular basket will determine whether a particular person is under the below poverty line or is under the above poverty line. Okay, and this particular thing is both common for rural and the urban areas. Clear? Next, the revised price adjustment to address regional and temporal price variations. It means that it focused on inflation. It completely focused on the inflation. Okay, so the basic minimum requirements or the basic amount of the goods that are required, if their prices increase over the time, that will affect the poor in the long run. That is the reason because of which the inflation need to be curtailed, the inflation need to be controlled, so that that particular person or that particular group of sector of the people can afford the basic minimum goods or the basic minimum requirements. Clear? Next, affect private expenditure in health and education. See, when it comes to the provision of the subsidized services, to the people, the government takes up the primary responsibility of providing the services at the subsidized rate to the people, government hospitals, government schools, etc. But the point that we need to understand is that just like any other project or any other infrastructure that is developed with the the involvement of the private participation, there has to be a mechanism through which the services can be provided at subsidized rates to the people through public private partnership. Clear? Next, adopting the mixed reference period. Mixed reference period is nothing but it is the reference period where the multiple timelines have been taken into the consideration, or the multiple scenarios have been taken into the consideration so as to come with the outcome of the poverty. It's not that the poverty is based or the poverty is completely based on one particular criteria or one particular timeline. So the uniform reference period which can be which is limited to one particular timeline is replaced by mixed reference period, clear, according to the Tendulkar committee. Next, poverty measurements in India. Okay, see, the point is that we have come up with this concept of CPI agricultural labor and CPI industrial workers. Okay, in order to understand the poverty, India has come up with this modern techniques or the modern criteria through which the poverty line is estimated. We are taking the consideration of consumption, we are taking the trends of the production, and we are taking the trends of the distribution into the consideration while estimating the poverty. Okay, so there are certain revised methods. Okay, the traditional methods of the calorie based approach or the traditional methods of the food, clothing, shelter, etc. have been replaced by the nutritional based approach or the approach with respect to the mixed reference period, or depending on the the CPI calculation of the CPI, the consumer price index, in the context of the CPI agricultural laborers and the CPI industrial workers for the urban areas also can be considered as an effective mechanism in order to calculate the levels of the poverty. Clear? Next, the Rangarajan committee. The Rangarajan committee was established in response to the public discontent. Okay, the planning commission at this point of time has said that 22 rupees 22 rupees both in the urban and the rural areas is enough in order to for a particular person to be above the poverty line. Okay, at this point of time there was heavy poverty in the country, and to bring the levels of the poverty, or to show that many of the people are above the poverty line, the planning commission has what do you say, come up with a mechanism that 22 rupees will be enough for a particular person per day to be above the poverty line. And there was a severe discontent with respect to this particular decision of the planning commission, and that is the reason because of which in the year 2012 the Rangarajan committee was appointed. Okay, and this committee conducted an independent survey. Okay, it conducted independent household survey through the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. Now, according to this, the or the what do you say, the nutrition based approach, the nutrition based approach that was developed by Indian Council of Medical Research. Okay, in terms of the balanced food, like the in terms of the calorie, the protein, the fiber, the other essential vitamins and fat. Okay, that has been taken into the consideration with respect to the age and gender. It means that when you are calculating the poverty levels, it has to be in the context of the guidelines that are provided by the ICMR in terms of the nutrition and in terms of the what do you say, the calories, the fat, the what do you say, protein, fiber, etc. That should be gender specific. That should be gender specific. It means that that is different for different genders. Clear? Next, this method estimated that number of poor individual was 19% higher in rural areas and 41% higher in urban areas. Okay, so the number of poor people was more in urban areas by 41% and 19% by in rural area, according to this particular committee. Clear? Next. Now, the another thing is that Niti Ayog's task force on poverty elimination. The Niti Ayog task force on poverty elimination. Okay. Now, this was constituted under the chairmanship of Aravind Panagaria. Panagria. Okay. And this was basically formed to understand the realistic level of poverty. The realistic level of the poverty line. Okay, the economic realities, or what is the exact state of poverty in India, or what is the exact level of the poverty in India, is what is considered by this poverty elimination, Niti Aayog's task force for poverty elimination. Next is the consumption measurement methods in India. First one is the uniform reference period. Uniform reference period. Now, uniform reference period is nothing but the 30-day is taken as the criteria, and the people or the respondents were asked to recall what all the things, or what was their consumption pattern. What were the things that were consumed in the past 30 days. Okay, the respondents were asked to recall the things that they have purchased or the things that they are able to afford in the past 30 days. Okay, till 1993 to 94, NSSO, the National Sample Survey Office, has used this mechanism for the, what do you say, uniform reference period. Next, mixed reference period. Mixed reference period is nothing but for certain goods which are frequently purchased. Okay, for certain goods which are frequently purchased, okay, the previous 1 year data or the previous 1 year consumption list has been asked. For the other goods, just 30 days is asked. Okay, for example, clothing, food, etc., the reference period that was set was 1 year. Okay, and for the other goods which are not that important or which are not that considered as the goods which are necessary for the necessary part of the essential goods, for those goods the 30 days criteria has been set up. Clear? That is with respect to the mixed reference period. Next. Now, modified mixed reference period, okay. So, the recall period here was further adjusted, okay. For certain food items, instead of the 30 days recall, 7 days recall period was set up. Okay, 7 days recall period was set up. And for the low frequency goods, 1 year recall period was set up. 1 year's recall period was set up. Clear? Which was earlier 30 days, the 1 year recall period was set up for the low frequency goods. Okay, enduku ante if the frequency of the purchase of the good is more, then having the 1 year recall period is relatively impossible. That is the reason because of which the low frequency goods, the recall period was 1 year. Okay, this method considered to provide a more precise reflection of consumption. Yes, because all the areas or all kinds of goods are considered as part of it, as part of this particular thing. Okay, now according to the India World Bank report in the year 2015, India's poverty rate for 2011 and 12 was 12.45%. 12.45%. Now the India's poverty rate has been declining considerably. This is the old data that has been presented, but now the India's poverty rate has been declining considerably, with the rural population being 4.86% and the urban population being urban poverty being the 4.09%. Clear? Next. So that's it with respect to this particular session of the unemployment and the poverty. Clear? Thank you.